Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Concussion Nerds Podcast. So, funny thing, I just recorded this whole thing and then hit stop and then realized I must have hit a button at some point and stopped the recording. And now I get to do it again. So, take two. Here we go. Today's episode is a little bit different. And as you can probably tell by my voice, I am still on the recovery path from my last week with COVID. So, this isn't obviously a concussion specific podcast. However, we know that when I talk about concussion recovery and working with persistent concussion, it is so much more than just the clinical work we do. And I feel like the gifts that I learned and were given this past week with experiencing COVID, we can take and translate into other scenarios in life and maybe into that with our kind of concussion recovery space as well. And so you guys are getting this first. I'm going to share this with my Medicine Circle coaching group here coming up as well. So sometimes when things happen, things that we don't control, they can happen at the worst time possible. And honestly, last week was one of the worst weeks I could have gotten sick. And by sick, I mean I was down and out sleeping the entire day for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I couldn't function. I felt like death. I think I might have done an Instagram story on one of those days, so you would have seen my deathness and heard my voice. So this voice is about 1,000 times better, 1,000 times better than it was last week. But it was a really crappy week for me to get sick because I was fully booked with clients who were coming in for what we do our mini intensives, right? So at Symphony, a mini intensive is what we do for a lot of our local clients, where they will come work with us for an intense period over a week, and then they go away for a few weeks. And we found it just works great with our concussion clients. So I was booked with a few clients for mini intensives, and we were also in the middle of the Concussion Nerds launch. So we were doing everything we could to share the news about our Concussion Nerds program to welcome in new clinicians to the community. And then I couldn't do any of it. We had to cancel all my client appointments, of which, thank goodness, I honestly work with the most amazing people, client-wise and team-wise. They were so understanding, and we got them all rescheduled. And so that worked out. My team stepped in. They heard my voice before we even realized that I'd had COVID, and they just took action. It was beautiful. So all those clients got rescheduled. But it was my Concussion Nerds launch, and I love showing up on social media. If you follow me on Instagram, I love showing up all the time. But during a launch, especially, I want you to hear my excitement. I love this program that I've created, and I couldn't. I literally slept for days. And so I have two amazing teams. I have my Symphony team, which has been with me for a really long time. And then I have my online team. And my online team and I used to be me and one other person. And now it's me and 5 other women. But literally 3 of those women just got added to the team within the last month. So we are still discovering how best to communicate with each other. We're still discovering what people love and don't love. And we've obviously done some prelim work and all this stuff, but we're still feeling each other out. And I was all of a sudden dealt this card where I couldn't show up, and I had to depend and pass the buck, so to say, over to them to fully represent nerds and me and my brand on social media in the middle of a launch. I had to give up complete control to my team, and they freaking crushed it. They crushed it. And because they were doing some of the bigger things that I normally thought I would have had to do when I did have my periods of awake and alertness, I got to do other fun things for it, right? I got to connect with more of you in the DMs. I got to email a bit more with some of you. I got to do that other stuff that fills my cup in huge ways too. But the beautiful thing, and one of the first gifts, when I say giving COVID was a gift, and we're going to talk about that in a highlight in a second too. One of the first gifts that came out of this was it expedited our ability to like work solidly as a team. We learned fast. We learned fast how we work well together. We learned fast how we communicate together. And now we have this stronger foundation that was able to be built faster when we move forward into other things that we decide to do. So often, when we get thrown a curveball or get thrown something that is outside of our control, right? So whether it's getting sick, like COVID, whether it's getting a concussion, whether it's another injury of some sort, one of the hardest pieces is the uncertainty that creates, right? I mean, if you're anything like me, you know, have a plan for certain things, right? Like we have months of things mapped out. I have goals that are like kind of have timelines, kind of, right? But there's an order and there's things that are happening when they're supposed to happen. And my son has things to do and places to be, and I have things to do. And we have orders and tools and protocols and things that we're following and timelines that we want to follow. And then all of a sudden, something happens, something that is completely outside of your control. And you don't know in that moment if you're going to be out of commission for a day, for a week, for a month, for a year. And so one of the first things that starts to happen is this fear or this alarm in your body that starts to creep up because of the loss of control for many people, not everyone, but for many people, but the uncertainty of not knowing how long it's going to last. And then when that feeling and that uncertainty starts to creep up, then our mind starts to go with, well, what if I can't do this? And what if this thing happens? And how am I going to do this? And some people, we start to spiral. When in that moment, what we really need to do is to come back to our body and what we're feeling, that uncertainty, that alarm system, that whatever that is in your body. And for me, it always shows up the same way. For me, it's always in my gut. And it's this like tingling, restrictive sensation in my arms and my chest. Sneak peek, this is the activation of your nervous system, right? This is a sympathetic activation of your nervous system. We are going to be teaching a whole workshop on this. But when we're in sympathetic, you guys, we don't think rationally. We just don't. And so it fuels the anxiety thoughts or the what if thoughts. And those what if thoughts then further fuel the body. And we get stuck in this loop. Whereas if we can come to our body and if we can settle this growing feeling that's happening in our body, it can help calm the whirling thoughts, and then we can start to make plans. Because the most important piece in this moment is prioritizing you and doing what you can for your health to help you move through this moment of whatever it is sooner. Because if you don't prioritize you, I promise you it's going to take longer to return to everything else that you are worried about not being able to do. And when you're able to calm a little bit of that uncertainty, because it's the first thing that comes up, when you're able to calm some of that uncertainty and say, okay, here's what I need to do for me. So for me, it was I need to sleep. And I reached out to my functional med colleagues and said, what should I be taking to kind of help? If there's anything I can take to help kick this to the curb faster. And who do I have in my sphere that I can call on for support? Y'all, my team stepped up huge from a business perspective. I already shared that with you, both clinically and online for launch. Personally, I have some really close friends where I am, thank gosh, and they brought me food. So I didn't have to cook, right? Like I pulled on my supports. And sometimes, depending on the type of person you are, that can be hard to do. It can be hard to ask for help because you're always the person that holds the space and you're always the person that is the rescuer. You're always the person that's the strong one. But everybody needs to ask for help at some point in time. And so in that moment, when you can settle that uncertainty feeling in your gut, then you can have a clearer brain as best as possible to help know who you're going to pull on so that you can prioritize you and your health to move forward faster. So I already talked about the first lesson COVID gave me, which was for the first time, like I actually had to give away control. I had to completely surrender everything business wise to my teams. And I shared the outcome of that was freaking beautiful. And they were amazing. I always trusted them to begin with, but that level of like absolute trust and safety and camaraderie that I share with my teams is that much more elevated and it's beautiful. That was gift number one. Gift number two, I talk about the podcast about how we're going to talk about the science and the spirit of concussion recovery, right? Because if you follow me and you're listening to this, I think recovery, especially when we're on a persistent concussion path, is so much more than just the clinical work we do. We have to go deeper. And so we're going to take a little bit of a trip into how, from a spiritual, personal discovery, I always call it deep work, gift COVID gave me. I think that there's an element of trauma that many of us live with in different ways. And when I say that, I do not mean that trauma needs to be a big event. Okay. In fact, commonly it's not the event itself that is the trauma, but more how your nervous system integrates and processes whatever the event might have been, big or small. What supports did you have around you in the time of the incident to help you process and integrate and metabolize that event? Right? Susie, this exact same scenario may happen to Susie and may happen to Jane, and Susie develops trauma around it, and Jane is totally fine and can shrug it off. Right? They're starting from different baselines. They have different experiences. They have different nervous systems. They have different lived experience, all these lovely things. And so for me, I just think that we are forever on, if you choose to accept it, this path of deep discovery, always unveiling layers about ourselves and knowledge about ourselves. But that starts with being able to have a period of self-reflection. From self-reflection, we gain awareness. And from awareness, we can then decide to do something about it or not. So we can decide to go do the work to integrate and process and metabolize it, or make change. But here's the thing. For that process to happen, we need to have space with nothing else in it. And how often, as humans today, do you actually give yourself space? I'm going to guess it's not a ton, because I try to, and I practice this, and some days or weeks or months, I recognize that I just haven't. COVID was a gift because it forced me to create space. And when I created that space, albeit not by choice, suddenly there was something that came up in my life that I needed to process, that I didn't even realize I needed to process. So I literally slept for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, I was starting to feel more human. And on Sunday, I was feeling super pulled to go. I needed to be in nature, right? My body was like literally like screaming, like pulling me into nature. It was beautiful. It was sunny. And initially I was like, sweet, I'm going to go for a walk with a friend. And I called like 2 or 3 friends, and like none of them could go for a walk. So I was like, okay. So I came home. I put my toque on my head because it was sunny and gorgeous, but it was chilly. Put my toque on my head. I was like, I'm going to walk to Starbucks and get a tea. That's what I'm going to do. So I put my headphones on, toque on, my vest on, walked at my front door. Like literally just like put my face up to the sun and just like took a breath because it was beautiful. Walked to Starbucks. Got my tea. Tried to call a friend to chat, no answer. What I say, the universe clearly was just putting all these things in place so that was forced to be present in my own company. And then I just started walking and I didn't stop walking. And I walked and I walked. And as I was walking, there was this piece of information and of my life that just kind of started filtering through me. And it brought up some emotions. There were some tears for sure. And I just kept walking. My body needed sunlight. It needed fresh air. It needed to be outside. And it needed movement. And so often what happens is we might feel something that our body is telling us it needs, but we let our mind overpower it and we ignore it. Or we're so disconnected from our bodies that we don't know what it actually needs. And so then we're not able to give it what it needs. So then we're not able to resolve this feeling that's calling to be moved through. I walked, I lost track of time. And then I came home and I felt called and pulled to sit in front of my meditation. If you've heard me talk before, I talked about the power of meditation, how I used to be absolutely horrific at it. Like I couldn't do it for 2 minutes, to how it got me through one of the hardest seasons of my life, to today where I still do it, but I wasn't doing it regularly. And since I moved into my new home, I actually hadn't set up my meditation altar. I had just been doing meditations wherever. And so I got home and I finished setting up my altar. I lit my candle and I pulled out my journal and I just started writing. And I wrote and I wrote and I started crying. Now picture a person with a cold crying. There's tears running down my face. There's snot pouring out of my nose. Not the most elegant picture at all. Probably not my most attractive moment. That's quite all right. I just wrote. And as I put my pen down, I remember feeling the deepest sense of peace. There's almost always, and has been for as long as I can remember, you guys, this like nervous energy that resides in my stomach. And it wasn't there. I was so grounded and I was so calm. And I had, oh, I mean, I still do, but the smile that came over my face, I honestly don't really have words for it. There was a depth of calm in me that I hadn't felt in a very long time. I had been working through some frustrations and some challenges and some hurt. And all of a sudden, after I went through this was hours, by the way, went through this process, it was gone. I was able to release it and instead look at things with smiles and love and warmth. I felt genuinely happy. And I've never been unhappy, but I felt genuinely happy in a way, as corny as it may sound, that like reached the depths of the cells of my body. I sent some friends some messages after just saying, thank you for being who you are. I paused because I'm remembering that moment and I still feel that. I still feel that sense of calm and that sense of depth. COVID gave me that, you guys. COVID gave me that space to work through this layer that I was struggling with so much, to integrate it into my nervous system, to release what needed to be released, to find a calm and a peace in my body that I hadn't felt in a long time. And with that, I get to come out of this with a stronger foundation and discovery of knowledge of who I am, with more clarity, with more depth, with more of wanting to be here and show you who I am and connect wholly. No superficial bullshit. I want real. And that's what I get to now do and bring to you, whether it be in every podcast episode we do or through the Concussion Nerds, our upcoming program that's really going to talk about how you build this foundation. I call it your human foundation. Because as we strengthen our human foundations, our ability to connect, understand, and integrate and process through our nervous system, we get to do epic things in life. And so, frick, this is why COVID was a gift. It forced me to take the space and the time that I definitely was not going to take at all to see the capability and trust of my team, see what we can all do together, see where I can let go of more to show up in other ways. But personally, so that I could go deeper in my own journey of personal discovery, so that I could have the time I needed for self-reflection, for awareness, and for integration, processing, and release. That requires space and time. It can be some of the hardest work you freaking do. I always say people that go on this journey of personal discovery, because you never know what's going to come up, the most courageous thing you're going to do, but the outcome always rewards you. And so if you are dealt a card of something that completely takes away your control in that moment, come back first to your body to calm the uncertainty. Prioritize you and what you need so that you will be able to get back to the things you love sooner. You are allowed to be angry and frustrated. Anyone who tells you you can't has never experienced a derailment in their life. You are allowed to be angry and frustrated. Let yourself feel that. But you can't stay there. Because if you stay there, then you're going to miss the opportunity and the gift that could come from that scenario. Change is hard, especially when it's not our choice. Shifting timelines, reorganizing plans or goals when that's not what you wanted to do at that moment, that's not fun. Let yourself feel that. But then let yourself be open to the opportunities and the gifts that can come. Find the wins, find the silver linings. The beginning of my week last week, it was the worst timing this could have happened. And then it became one of the best gifts that I could have received. And last night, because I'm all about celebrating the wins, last night I had myself one beverage and I set myself a picnic in front of my fireplace, which you can see a reflection of you in. And I cheersed myself. And I celebrated the deep work of the day that I had done. I celebrated my team. I celebrated the new nerds that came into the program. So excited to meet them. I celebrated the gift and thanked the universe for what had happened. So I hope as you listen to this, you can see how you can extrapolate this to so many different scenarios of life. And I hope you found it valuable. Next week, we're back with a special guest interview, and we will be continuing on our journey of concussion, acute and persistent. We will see you then, my friends. That's today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, give us a like, give us a share, give us a tag on Instagram, and please never hesitate to reach out. We love communicating and connecting with you. Until next week, my friends, have a marvelous day.